Okay, all yours, Gail. Kick us off.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Good afternoon or good morning, whichever time zone you're joining us from. My name is Gail Winslow. I'm the Senior Director of Marketing here at Halloran, and I want to thank everybody for joining today's speaker series on program management, the key to success for life science companies. Our panel today will share Halloran's program management insights and highlight key examples from our work across all stages of development. Before we begin, I just want to open up with a few housekeeping items. Please keep yourself on mute, and we will have time at the end of the program for questions and discussions. When we begin our Q&A at the end of the session, you can unmute by either pressing *6 if you dialed in from a mobile device, or click unmute on your computer, which you'll find in the lower navigation bar. If you have any questions for the panelists as we're getting going or throughout the program, you can enter those into the chat feature, again, found at the bottom of the navigation on your screen. We will monitor these and also include these in our Q&A as a starting point. I think there's a next slide. For those who are unfamiliar with Halloran, we are a life sciences consulting firm providing strategy, regulatory, quality, clinical, program, and organizational support to industry leaders and startup visionaries in the pharma, biotech, and med device sectors. Our team of consultants are subject matter experts who deliver a tailored approach to each engagement, successfully propelling our clients to achieve their next inflection point. We're always looking for ways to share our insights with our life sciences community, and we started this speaker series so that our consultants could share their deep expertise and knowledge to our network. Please let us know if you're interested in a topic or interested in getting involved. Next slide. And joining me today as part of our program, I'm going to be introducing Yolanda, who will serve as our moderator, and she'll be joined by Carolina and Pam. And Yolanda, I would actually turn it over to you so that you can introduce yourself and then have either yourself or the panelists introduce each other. Have a great program and enjoy the day.
Great, thank you, Gail. And I'd like to echo Gail's welcome to everybody. We appreciate you coming out. It's kind of lonely if we'd only had 3 people turn up. So thank you, appreciate that. As Gail mentioned, my name's Yolanda Hayden. I've been with Halloran since last July, but I've been in program management for probably 15 years now. I kind of slid into it, and I think it's going to be interesting to hear just a little bit about the different backgrounds from each of us on the panel. My first degree is in English, so that means I can read and write. It's going to be very different from many other people. So let me turn it over. Carolina, would you introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, thank you, Yolanda. So again, I'm Carolina Arndt. My background, I've been in the industry for 20 years. I actually started out as a CMC analytical chemist and then moved my way into formulation development. So I'm a scientist by heart. I got into program and portfolio management on the sponsor side because I really enjoy working with teams, taking candidates basically that are nominated all the way out to an NDA or BLA. And then I had the luxury of also dabbling a little bit in regulatory affairs. So I was able to interact with, the FDA project managers, write briefing books, do all that fun stuff in terms of filing INDs, BLAs, and NDAs. And I've been with Halloran about a year now and really enjoy, what our group has done from a strategy and program leadership perspective. So, Pam?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Carolina. I'm a lead consultant, program manager with Halloran, which I've been with Halloran since about last October timeframe. But I've been in the life sciences research for the area for well over 20 years or so. Program management experience is about 10 years, but I always say I have a diverse background because I have the research, healthcare, and business background. I actually started off as a nurse, and once I got my main core training, moved into clinical risk management in the healthcare setting. But about that time, the FDA came out with the pharmacovigilance and safety risk initiatives. And that kind of really drew my attention and drew me over into the research area. Landed into the pharmacovigilance and drug safety area and have kind of carried that safety and risk piece with me throughout the different positions that I've had in the life sciences. But once I landed into a program management position, which you'll hear a little bit more about some of the experiences I've had, I really knew that I had, found my in the life science.
Great. Well, this is going to be more of a chat than a moderated panel. But before we start out, I hope you all brought your HB pencils because we have some questions for you, just to get a feel for who's in our audience. So our question number 1, does your company have a project manager? And you can see this is a binary question. And then second, does your company have a program manager? And then if the answer to that second one is yes, what is the background of your program manager? And you've got several choices there. We're going to give you just a minute or two because these are not really very tricky. We might sort of yabber on in the background just to keep you occupied because it would be better than us playing Muzak or singing.
Hi, this is Claire. Do we get a link to a poll or I don't see any?
It should be appearing on your screen.
Oh, okay, I don't see one. I just wanted to give you a heads up. That's all.
Claire, I'll look into it, but it seems like we are getting responses back from others on the call.
Okay, no problem.
I think you're being kept behind for detention, Claire.
Sorry about that, Claire. I'll share results in just a minute. We're still getting some come through. Okay, I'm going to end the poll, Yolanda, and just share the results with everyone.
Great.
We can just speak through those.
Okay, so we're going to have a lot of expertise in here. We'll just try and keep one step ahead of you if we can. As you can see, we have the vast majority have a project manager or a program manager, but as we mentioned at the beginning of this, the background, very mixed. So let's talk a little bit first about definitions. A program manager, a project manager, a portfolio manager. Some of these terms are used a bit interchangeably, but let's get into this and talk about first what's the difference between a project manager, a program manager, and a portfolio manager. And you will get tired of my voice, but don't worry about it. We talked about this briefly amongst ourselves. And again, although there is some sort of overlap at times, a program manager will be managing a group of projects. A project manager will be managing an individual project usually, or could have 2 or 3 different projects going on. They are going to be definite activities where you have a start, you have a finish, you have a goal. They are unique. Those of you who've gone through your PMP training know we have to use the word unique in there. A portfolio manager has an even broader umbrella. So they will bring their program managers together to ensure that the programs are all moving forward to bring value to the company's portfolio. They may well be very closely aligned with business side. So that's very simplistic, but just so that we know what we're talking about. So now we've got our vague thought. Let's talk about specifically program management. Pam and Carolina, we're all program managers, but we have different kind of activities, different kinds of experiences. But how do you define your role? And tell us a little bit about your experiences. Pam, let me go to you first.
Okay, thank you. Well, exactly like you said, the program manager can be involved in very diverse roles, but I think really one of the main common elements that I have found among the different positions that I've held is that I'm always working in teams, which is what I thoroughly enjoy as far as a program management role. I've been in roles where I maybe have started up brand new programs, or maybe I'm that key liaison or that connection person among all those many projects or that larger program. Just to give you some examples of some things that I've worked on, especially within Halloran overall, has been working with some biotech companies, program management role, facilitating among different business functions, business units, doing assessments as far as their startup of maybe a pharmacovigilance program, taking a relook at their seedling program, their end-to-end, seeing how that they are doing as far as meeting the compliance regulatory piece of it, and even working with a medical device company that was interested in setting up a EPMO, an enterprise program management office, and looking at that assessment and making recommendations for that build out. And what I always say about program management is you wear different pairs of glasses that provide you different perspectives, but that enables that program manager to really see things in a different way. So that's the way I always like to look at it. We can wear different hats, but in the end, you know, we are able to look at things in a different view. And then Carolina, if you want to share a bit too. I'm sorry.
Yeah, from my experience, actually, I think my role is involved across the drug development spectrum. For early stage assets and that I'm helping clients with, it's really getting to that IND or getting to that first clinical study start. And then the role evolves into phase 2 and phase 3 clinical development, where I'm helping to bring together, okay, how are we going to get to market, for instance, right? And then after that piece, the role evolves again a third time into how do we get a marketing application submitted for launch to help a lot more patients. So the common thread there is usually, you know, the program manager evolving the role to kind of adapt to, you know, early stage, which is primarily non-clinically driven to enable a clinical trial, clinical stage. So you're going through phase 1, 2, and 3. And then, you know, whatever your pivotal phase study could be is basically now being able to use that information and head to market, because you're going to file with a BLA or an NDA application and go, great, we're going to go launch and help many more patients. And so I think that's the joy that I get out of my job, is essentially helping, you know, all these companies hit those big key milestones and really looking at it from a big holistic picture, because you're, you know, it's not just, oh, let me just get to IND, or well, let me get to that next press release, or let me get to, you know, let's get a publication out. It goes beyond that. It's what is good for the program and the asset at hand. Yolanda, do you want to speak to some of your experiences as well?
Yeah, I'm focused predominantly on early stage companies. Just happened to work out that way. I mean, I've worked with a group that really was just starting up, so I was in there right from the beginning. More commonly, I'll come into a group that's been established for a little while. They may have outgrown their current the ways of working. You know, there may have been a small group of, let's say, half a dozen people. I think I'm probably not the only one here that's experienced that, but they haven't set up their systems, their tools, their templates, or anything like that in order to support their success. So my job is then to come in and help them do that. Sometimes doing the wrangling of the humans, because not all the teams work smoothly together. For those of you who haven't been doing this very long, just a warning for you. So if there are some frictions or misunderstandings between the group, then that's where I'm going to try and help smooth that out. My major goal is to get people or teams through their initial IND filing. I have worked in a small molecule, but my most recent work has been in cell therapy. I'm now working on my third cell therapy project. So anybody who's been in the academic world knows that an N of 3 is a grant proposal. So I am now an expert in cell therapy. So I talked a little bit about the actual things that I do. So the tools, the templates, the organizational pieces. But ladies, what about you? Carolina, what comes up in your day that you do to ensure success?
A couple things, right? To add on to your stuff, Yolanda, strategy, right? Because the common thing that I always hear is, what's the strategy? Often I'm assigned to projects and I know that the higher ups know the strategies, but the people working on the project may not know the strategies. So I constantly think about strategy, risk, and mitigation planning, because those go hand in hand. And then the second thing I also think about is the timelines, because the first question is, wait, great, we have the strategy established. How fast can we get there? Usually the second question, right? And so I think I help to enable that as well and understand some of the key risks and mitigation plans, as well as working with the team, because sometimes, you know, team members come in and out, and it's good to be able to you know, encourage people by having, documentation in place, background materials, re-educating people. When I have someone new starting on my program or project, I always make a point to have a one-on-one meeting with them, get them educated and up to speed really quickly, because sometimes they're a functional line manager. And again, we're in a matrix environment, may not be able to give the big picture and broad picture view. I think that's the added value we have as program managers, to be able to do that, to go, okay, from this perspective, we need this to enable this. We need drug product to enable a clinical trial. We need that clinical trial to inform our regulatory pathway, for example. So I think those are some of the day-to-day things that, I deal with are, decision-making, team wrangling, as you call it, Yolanda, and really asking key questions and challenging the team to facilitate that communication. Because I think as a team, we bring a lot of diversity in terms of our opinions, thoughts, and ideas. And for us to be able to pull it together, ask the right questions, just really helps with the team involvement. So Pam, from your perspective and thoughts?
Yeah, no, actually, this is a good follow-up to what you're just stating, because to me, anytime I talk about the program or the projects I'm working on, I'm not by myself. I've got the team that I'm working with. And just to add on to what you talked about as far as working with the team members, I think a big part of program management is ensuring that all those team members understand how to work together, and also how to coordinate all their efforts so that they're working toward that larger goal. To me, that's a lot of, when you talk about a program manager as far as facilitation, collaboration, engagement. Again, that's a big piece of it, is pulling everyone together so that you are all working toward that common goal.
So we've talked a bit here about what the role encompasses, what we might do on a day-to-day basis, but I'd like to talk a little bit more about the qualities that at least we think make an effective program manager. And I say we think because I'm quite sure that each person with their own experience has found some slightly different pieces. I think I would probably be correct in saying, though, that one of the real qualities that is essential for a program manager is strong communication. Strong communication skills, written, verbal. One of the biggest problems I see over and over in programs is a lack of effective communication. And that's, I think, what the program manager has to create, foster, whatever the team is starting, to bring them up to the next level. It's essential that the working team is able to feed up the information to management. And likewise, management is ensuring that the team knows, as was mentioned earlier, what the strategy is. You cannot at all carry out that strategy if you don't know what it is. As you may have guessed as well, to me, another strong quality is a decent sense of humor. Do I take what I do seriously? Absolutely. Do I take myself seriously? No. I like to enjoy my work. And I actually more and more believe that if members of the team are enjoying their work, it goes more smoothly. It just moves along better, because you all feel like you really truly are working together, and that's obviously what we need to do. Pam, what would you like to add about essential qualities for a program manager?
I actually have a pretty good little list here, so you'll see me kind of glancing down, because I want to make sure I don't miss any of these, because I thought about this quite a bit. Being a consultant, one thing is really feeling that you're fully vested in the success of that client. But even that's, to me, a key quality for a program manager overall. You're really vested in the success of that team overall, your deliverables, what is it that you're really moving towards, for closeout at the end. You're that strategic business partner. You're generous with credit to others. So you're actually leveraging others. You're bringing in their knowledge and skills to help support you and that overall team concept. A good program manager has that accountability and also integrity as well. You embrace change. You're not afraid of change. To me, I think any of us working in the life sciences and the healthcare environment right now, if you have to survive, to be able to survive, you have to be able to embrace change. Work in the gray, meaning you're able to work with uncertainties. And you have that big picture thinking, like was mentioned earlier too, about being able to think holistically, because you're able to offer that clarity during chaos. That's where your strategy comes in. So I didn't say that I create chaos, but actually, you're offering that clarity during the chaos when that happens, and they're relying on that program manager to be that lead. And then Carolina, do you have anything else that you wanted to add to that from what you've mentioned earlier?
Yeah, I think you guys spoke to it really well, right? Communication is the key. The one thing I will add from the communication perspective is being a good listener, because a lot of the time we're in meetings, we don't always get consensus, but we will get potentially alignment toward that common goal, right? I think you also spoke to gratitude, Pam, which I think is also an important thing. We're in development. Development is messy, right? And we're in this for a little while. So sometimes you guys might get stuck with me. I try to find ways to encourage people to celebrate the little wins and to remember to say 2 words, thank you, because that goes a long way for a lot of people. And, I think that's also a key piece to the one of the qualities that we have. And then also influence with respect to being able to move a team, right? Because a lot of these people don't report to program managers, they report to their functional line managers. How do we convince them to get on that boat with us and head toward the same goal or the same destination? So helping them provide that roadmap to success is kind of where I see that as well.
So I'm going to take a moment out here because we do have a question from the audience. Jeff Horrigan. Can't see you there, Jeff, but I know you're hiding there nicely. Jeff has asked, could we speak to any nuances between internal embedded program managers and the external or consulting program managers? I'm going to go back to you, Carolina. Have you served in both roles? And if so, how would you characterize any nuances?
Yeah, I want to characterize it as more of not so much a nuance as a partnership. I've done both sides. I've been on both sides of that, right? I was on the sponsor side and now I'm on the consultant side. So I think, some of the nuances usually are, well, I don't have that. Why are you bringing in a consultant to help me with that? Instead of saying that, why don't we say, embrace that extra knowledge set, right? Why don't we capitalize on that another person giving their perspective? Maybe you have late stage experience or I have early stage and vice versa. Let's play together, right? But I think the bigger key issue is, how do we promote ourselves as program managers to the companies? Because we are partners. We partners, with, basically the C-suite, the executive team, all the team members, all the key stakeholders. And it's not so much a nuance per se. I think it's more of a, let's work together to achieve the same thing, because our goals are going to be the same, whether you're internal or whether or not or external and offering another perspective. Let's utilize those different perspectives, because there could be something that could be of added value. I don't know, Pam, do you want to comment more on that as well?
Yeah, I was actually going to agree with you because of the communication piece. That's what's key, but that's what's very important, is being able to discuss, whether it's internal, external, working together, making sure that you're on the same goal, which working for whatever specific program or project, what the end result should be and what the deliverables should be, and you're moving toward the success of that.
So I would say there is one thing that's the same for whether you're an in-house or external consultant, is you have responsibility without authority. That's always the toughest part, I think, of being a PM. You're not in charge of anybody. But you still have to get the team to meet their timelines, their budget, their scope, or have answers for why you haven't. But I think there are some differences. And the thing I notice most, and I don't know if it's specific to early stage, but I usually parachute in after the team has formed, and when they realize they need something extra to help get them more organized. Pam mentioned in the qualities, I believe it was Pam, that you have to be adaptable. And so you have to parachute in, you have to get up to speed pretty quickly on what the program is about, which for those of us without a scientific background, it's very exciting. But you also need to be able to get to understand the characters of your different team members as quickly as you can, and the interactions, and that some of those little unspoken pieces that go into any team Then you need to, because you have a limited engagement, I say that, but we do have some consultants who've worked for several years with a company, but from my experience, you have to be ready and make sure that you've set up your systems in a way that you know you're dispensable. Quite often a company will be looking to hire an internal person and they are using a consultant to kind of cover the gap or to control their budget a little bit more on the short term. And so knowing that you're going to be leaving the company at some point, you need to leave everything tied up nicely with a bow as best you can, ready for the person who comes in. So thanks for that question, Jeff. Makes us feel like we're not just talking to the ionosphere. So that's good. I do like seeing a few of you on camera as well. That helps us out. Let's look back at another couple of things that we might want to talk about. The title of our talk was about bringing value. So I think we'd really like to move to that now. So what is the business value and the benefit of a program manager? Carolina, you're sitting there looking like you don't want to be asked a question, so it's you.
No, absolutely no. I think the business value for from being a program manager is really, number one, to help drive the strategy or key milestones and goals, right? To help manage the cross-functional teams and activities, and to really, the one thing we probably didn't touch upon is to be proactive producers. I think oftentimes, the program managers, oh, all you guys do is schedule meetings and, focus and enforce timelines. I'm like, our role goes beyond that. So many means, right? I always challenge this because early in my career, we used to have this stigma on us, right? And I feel like we do a lot more than that. I mean, an example I can provide is for, a recent BLA or NDA that I worked on. I came in, I was asked, get that BLA or NDA filed fast. I come in and I'm like, okay, I'm expecting, timelines to be validated, strategy to be outlined, and all the documentation in order. No, we're a year away, and I'm like, I come in and things are scattered. Teams aren't communicating. Strategy was defined, but it was never documented and communicated. So what do? I fix that with, let's have a kickoff meeting. Let's get everybody level set. And also knowing that the team members have varying experience as well. We had junior, senior, and team members who've done this time and time again. So how do I accommodate to that? I do some education through my slides. I simplify, some of the complex concepts because, applications, very complex, by the way, for those of you who have been through a BLA or NDA, there's a lot that needs to go on. There's lots of documentations. There's a lot of personalities. There's a lot of, interactions that have to happen amongst the groups. So by doing some of those things, I like to call it the Carolina sticker method. And what do I mean by that? Strategy, timelines, index, communication, and reporting. Those 5 things are the key to help any team move toward whatever that business or corporate goal is. And I think that's really important. So, and going back to the example I provided for the case study, in the end, we did get that BLA and NDA filed, right? And a lot of people, can be proud because now we're offering another therapy to the patients who really need it, especially in oncology where, the standard of care is chemotherapy. People are now able to say, I've worked on a marketing application. And more importantly for the company, they are now seen as, oh, I'm heading toward commercial and launch. That's a huge milestone for a lot of companies. And as you guys can tell, I'm very passionate about this because it's a huge milestone for a lot of people. I don't know, Pam, do you want to speak to yours?
Yes, talking about the value piece of it, the program manager, ensures that those program benefits and deliverables are taken care of as expected. So they're coordinating those activities for the program components, and that's where that value piece comes in. So basically the value of that organization for that program management, that program setup is determined up front. And then that blueprint, whatever is to follow as you're doing your program management piece, leads to pretty much what we've been talking as far as like a strategic plan, the strategy piece of it. An example would be is when working for a healthcare organization, I was part of the startup of the new research institute. What illustrates is that the organization establish what their value was going to be by determining, okay, we're going to put this new program in place, this new research program in place, and we want to be at the forefront of research and what's going on. So there were several components that was involved in that as far as in the program management role that added value to this. We did everything from, like, as I said, we had the blueprints of the new institute started off with the very first strategic plan. So as a program manager, I was responsible for ensuring that that was managed and facilitated and followed up throughout the whole program. Because it was a nonprofit organization, there were donor materials that were prepared. There were philanthropy reports that was done on an annual basis, the impact reports. It also included the communication piece, which was another value identified by the organization. So the internet and intranet internally was established, and internal clinical programs and seminars for the staff was also set up because education was very important. There was also marketing and communication activities that was done that included multimedia activities, infographics, setting up outreach activities, and again, being as a program manager, being responsible for that. Again, going back to what the organization was wanting to see is giving that institute that face and also educating the internal and external of what was going on with the institute. And it also included, because it was a research institute, setting up a grant program, a research grant program, and also a part of a publications projects, just getting the information out there on what we were doing for research, but also to use for additional presentations. So again, going back to the value, what is it that that organization was establishing, and what were the end results of the deliverables for that to ensure that that value piece was met?
And that's interesting because I mean, I hear both of you talking about value, but it's in a sort of more intangible ways. And I tend to think of the tangible part. I suppose that's partly because in one of my roles, I really was very, very much in charge of the budget. Good program manager is, as I mentioned, going to bring that team together. The early stage companies, it's not unusual to find that they have several academics in there who will talk about an experiment, go, that would be really interesting. Well, a program manager is going to help them gently come back into the fold and say, what's the business value? And if there isn't one, we're not doing it, unless you want to pay for it yourself, you know. We are establishing those timelines and holding people accountable. So we are trying to get that product to market as fast as we can, with as little risk as possible and as inexpensively as we can, as you know, depending on what level of control we have. So I think that's really where I think of it, just making a smoothly oiled machine, but a fun one. So it's more like a fun house, I guess, that will take us through to reach our goals and bring that level of value to the company. I can talk about, sorry, go ahead, Pam.
I'm sorry, I was trying to wait for in the between breaks of excuse me. Because I was just going to add to exactly what you're saying with as far as the control and the costs and everything, because as a program manager, you're ensuring that better control by saving those costs, because you're always looking at continuous improvement. You know, looking at better, you know, is there more potential within those projects? And it kind of feeds right into like what you're saying, Yolanda, as far as the monies and the cost piece as well.
And I do understand within A&E project team, there's a lot of different expertise. But as a concrete example of being able to bring value, financial value to a team, I do know I've been in a situation where I looked through a contract and I went, hey, wait a minute, these numbers don't add up. None of the technical experts had had the time or the wherewithal to be able to look through that. That to me was a responsibility I had, so it saved us a fairly good chunk of money. I've also had something where a contractor has not performed, and so as the program manager, I go back to them and I say, we're not going to pay for this because you didn't deliver. And those can be tough discussions. Quite often the technical experts will have built up a relationship with that CRO, and so they don't really want to upset them. I don't care. I'm paid enough to hold their feet to the fire because I am answerable on that budget, and I want to save the company some money if it's appropriate. Anybody else got some concrete examples of bringing value? And it doesn't have to be money, don't worry.
Yeah, I think part of it, Yolanda, I'll speak to some of that, right? Some of the concrete examples, as you say, you know, the experiment I asked people to challenge, do an experiment with and without a program manager, right? I once worked on an IND where there was not a program manager. I inherited, oh, we're going to work on a second IND. That first one, what did I ask that team? Essentially, I'm like, what went wrong? I was told there were version control issues. There were issues with, that CEO not knowing, okay, what's going on. And, that high maintenance CEO also sending emails saying, TikTok, when is that submission going in? And not the other kind of TikTok, right, that people see with musical and dance, but TikTok, when I'm watching my clock, when is it going to go in, right? And so I think as a program manager, when I worked on the second one, I was able to implement a lot of some of the key practices, right? We had version control to documents. We had a process and a procedure put in place to ensure that it went and we produced a quality document for the IND. In terms of, maybe a little bit more high maintenance, I need it now, I responded quickly and actually generated a really good rapport with that CEO, because my team used to tell me, whoa, you could predict what he's going to say next. I'm like, yes, because if you empathize and sympathize and actually put yourself in his shoes, he's looking at that document right now. He wants a quick response. So for those particular individuals, you just have to respond, and then they feel like, okay, I'm connected, right? Because a fast response usually means you're paying attention. And then being able to roll up sleeves, because we had people come in and out. And so I had to help write some of those sections or review some of those sections or QC. So it's really rolling up your sleeves and actually offering, because I have a reg background, to help with those other tasks that are more tangible. Pam, I don't know if you want to speak to some more of your examples.
Yes, and matter of fact, one of the first program management positions I got into, I can give you an example of, because it's actually what really get me connected into the industry with within this area. It was a phase 4 post-marketing program. I was working with, it initially started off with a smaller biotech, and we were bought out by a larger company. We had a government contract, and in the role as a program manager, I was a liaison, really a liaison and a strong relationship builder, because it involved 5 different federal agencies. I was the core program manager for the internal folks within our company, which included clinical trial management, operations, the monitoring, the safety group, but then also the external group, like I've mentioned, as far as the folks within the federal agencies. But then also there was the CRO, and there was also the vendor management piece, working with, for example, like a medical writer. The ultimate goal for this program, because it was a government contract and it extended over many years, and the value that we brought was that, number one, was to ensure the safety of this particular vaccine for patients, and number two, to ensure compliance, of that government contract. So then in turn, it did, bring value as far as within the particular product that we were working with, and for the organization and fulfillment of the contract as well.
I'm going to turn to some of our audience, because we have some more questions come in. I really appreciate Leanne asking this one, because she's asked, can Carolina please define sticker again?
Yes, absolutely. It's one of my favorite terms. So it's the sticker. The S stands for the strategy. The T is for the timelines. The I is for the index. The C is for communication. And the R is for reporting.
Good. And the reason I really like Leanne asking that one was because I didn't take notes on that, but always like to learn something new. So Shannon has asked us, what best practices do you utilize to communicate key information from strategy meetings without including all of the broader project team in a fast-paced environment? I just have as an aside there, is there any other kind of environment? But Pam, how about you? How do you communicate that kind of information?
Best practices. A lot of times it depends upon the organization that I'm working with as well too. You know, what is the culture? What are some of the tools that we have access to? But then it's not unusual to come in as, especially if we're coming in as a consultant and looking at the overall view of the activity with a client, is look at, okay, take an assessment, look at how can we actually streamline some of the processes that are going on and make it easier to work with. It could be anything from, you know, utilizing the Word documents to Excels to developing your own trackers to some of the software applications that are out there too. So again, I think that kind of goes back to the versatility that we have to be as a program manager and being able to fit in that environment as far as what applications are available, but then also being able to freely, you know, recommend some things that you've used in the past and be creative and kind of think outside what they may be regularly using, recommend some tools that would streamline their processes and actually enhance their communications too. And probably meeting facilitations is probably one of the ones that we run across the most, that we definitely work with the most.
I think the next question, Srivani, and if I've not pronounced your name correctly, I do apologize. This one's mine. Can you speak to situations where the program manager has less experience than the subject matter experts and department heads? How can this program manager lead the program to success by working with these, and this is interesting, challenging team members? In my experience, not always challenging, but it can be sometimes that people don't understand why you don't necessarily understand. The way I deal with it, because I do not have a great deal of subject matter expertise at all. First of all, I use it as a sales pitch. I tell them I don't get caught up with the whole forest and the trees. I see through to where my goal is, where the path is I want to be, and that's what I'm going to help people get towards. I'm not going to get distracted by too much of the minutiae. You know, what was the cell count in this particular process development run? It doesn't make any difference to me unless it's going to throw off our timeline or something like that. I ask questions. Quite often people want to tell you what they know. Now, I don't even mind saying, look, can you explain it to me as I'm a 7-year-old? Because I want to be able to understand enough to be able to support the team. I've found quite often that people are grateful for that, because they don't want to be trying to work with somebody who has no idea what's going on. So those to me are the pieces. You're not going to get hung up, and do ask questions. If they truly are challenging, I will sometimes go to one side and say, look, I have a problem on the team because I don't understand as much as maybe you would like me to, but I need you to work with me to support team success and company success. And that kind of plea to their better nature will often work. If that doesn't work, then I just fire them. Not that I have that authority, but let me throw this question out from Joanne. Joanne says, what do you consider the best practice to keep parking lot items from falling off the map and ensure that these items are discussed with the appropriate SMEs? Do you typically include these type issues in recurring meetings? Carolina, tell me what you think.
Yeah, so I do it periodically. I've seen it where people have actually created dashboards where here are the current hot topics, right? And then also on that same dashboard is the parking lot items, right? Well, won't we talk about it now because that isn't the focus, but later on, don't forget, right? I think we just had this recently occur with one of my programs where, the FDA is now feeding on diversity in clinical trials, right? And they have a form for that. So, okay, you don't need to do that right now, but we need to keep that in the future as something to track, right? Or if FDA is giving you feedback along the development pathway, how do we keep track of all those comments to make sure that they are addressed?
Your legs are
right?
eaten alive. Huh? Your legs have been eaten alive. I know.
That's exciting.
Someone else has been eaten alive. Okay.
Thank you, Tim's iPhone. We appreciate that.
Yeah. So so I do occasionally, bring them up, or at least I keep track in the background and bring them up when appropriate, right? And actually, I think I want to go back to one of your questions as well, because someone asked about, the strategy meetings and how you, go back to that and not including the broader team. Here's what I say to that. We don't need to have, because a lot of people don't like this, 100 people at a meeting. So what do? You're the program manager. You sit in that strategy team meeting, you talk to the people, and then immediately, okay, hey, here's the strategy, communicate it to the functional lines. Typically, when I start on a program, I actually meet with the executive team and the VPs just to ensure that, hey, we're moving towards this goal. We've outlined a strategy. It does need to get communicated, but okay, not all 100 people need to be there. So how do we get that communication out? I rely upon the functional heads, right? If they're coming to my core team meeting, I expect them to spread the wealth and share the information with the people who work with them. And so I think that's what you do. And as the strategy changed, I actually have a slide that I present at every development and core team meeting that says, here's the reason why it changed and here's the impact. And so, I really like to, speak to that piece just to answer that particular question. So I don't know if you want to,
We've got another question in from Cindy. Cindy says, being a program manager for R&D projects, which is prior to DP nomination, is challenging given that activities are less defined compared to the clinical phase. Do you find the need for the program manager at this early stage? Pam, I know that's not necessarily been your focus, but you've certainly worked across the spectrum. So what do you think? Do you need a program manager for R&D projects?
Actually, I think that a program manager is needed throughout the whole end-to-end process. It's kind of like, I think of the program manager as far as with risk management too. You should be able to view it from the beginning to the end. And again, that's where your value, I think, comes in too. You look at the program manager, what is it they're working towards, at the end? What is their deliverables? If they're involved up front, then they have that total view of what's going on. So I think it is definitely important to have that program manager early on.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think if you don't, when you come to your clinical phase, you're hunting all over the place to find things like, where is this particular tox study? Who signed off on this? Do we have a cover page even? Just some of the stuff that sounds really tedious, but is essential both for moving forward into your clinical study, and you want to set things up in case you ever want to sell your asset, for instance. And that would also require easy access to all of the information that somebody might want to look at to conduct their due diligence. So I think having a program manager from the very initiation of a company is vital. I do know that there are the companies that don't see that value. And all they see is, I'm going to be spending money on somebody who's not actually doing the science. But as I've told my colleagues, to me, program management is an investment, not an expense, because ultimately we're going to save you time, we're going to save you money, we're going to have a cohesive team that will support success. Anybody else?
I'll add to your topic as well, right? Because I've been on that, prior to the candidate nomination. It is important, right? Because they're going to come up with more than one target. Think about it. The pipeline is fed by multiple targets. So who's going to take care of that? A program manager, typically, right? Yeah, you could say it's a biologist. You could say it's potentially the chemist, but why not utilize someone in our role, right? I'm going to challenge that, because yes, we do need someone early on to be able to balance that. Because I've seen, people do some of those initiatives early on with, okay, we want to evaluate this particular asset, but it didn't make it through, a GLP tox study, for instance. Okay, that one gets killed. Or, if we take this one, I think to your point, Yolanda, and we can sell that to another company and then fund other aspects of our timeline. Or, hey, we have a great signal in this. Let's take it all the way to the very end and get that marketing application, right? So I agree with you, Yolanda. So,
and also, the program manager has that total view of what's going on. So if they're brought in initially and carried through, again, they are familiar with all parts, all individuals, and able to facilitate that on through the whole end-to-end process.
Yes, because I think that's important. Bringing various pieces together, bringing together the scientists working in the lab and their leader, bringing together them with the people who are working on manufacturing, making sure that regulatory group is brought in early enough to understand and help head off any problems. The program manager is also probably going to be the main person who will help the team identify risks and mitigations. And again, that's going to bring business value because you can't easily prepare for the risks you haven't thought of. If you have thought of them and you have thought of a mitigation plan, then you're not less likely to have to redo some work and again, waste time and money. We have a question here from Judy. Judy says, for documents that several team members have to edit, how did you solve your version control issues? Now, my initial answer to that is mwahaha, but I'm going to turn to Carolina and ask her how she's handled this.
Yeah, I've seen it handled different ways. It depends on, if your company is big or small and able to invest in systems that are able to do this. I know that, there's I'm going to call them, we call it proactive proponents of, hey, I like SharePoint because everybody can, edit the document in SharePoint, but the only problem is, well, how do I know you've actually reviewed and looked at it? I know people who like, please review, because you can put that document into a system and then you can actually check if someone actually opened the document, provided comments, and completed their reviews. Although sometimes some of those other buttons are a little hard for some of the staff to know, okay, I need to click on the I completed my review button. I've seen people add initials to the end of, documents. And, there's pluses and minuses to that. It's great if you have a small team. Try managing, 20, 30 reviewers on that, right? And so you can imagine all the you're going to reach your 256 maximum limit file size is basically what's going to happen, right? So I wish I had an easy answer, Judy, to yours, but there are just different ways. And I think part of it comes down to enforcement, picking a system, sticking with it, and really kind of monitoring it to make sure people actually took a look and actually reviewed the information, that they didn't mess it up, or, oh, let's just take the version off of SharePoint and start editing. And I'm like, oh, wait a second, right? We have these things set up, and I think it just comes down to identifying the process, reiterating, and enforcing, whatever that method is. And, kind of, I want to say plug and play, because what works for one company may not work for another company, depending on the size. So.
I see that I don't know who the first name, but D. Rosen asks, how do you deal with situations where the development or timeline does not go as expected? And again, I've got the facetious answer is you become a program manager. But as a program manager, I think when you say does not go as expected, you do expect some of that. That's why you're going to be developing your risk log, your mitigation plan, and then sometimes you will need to do a reset. It's just, not every program is going to be effective. It's just, chances are that you're not going to have every program be effective. So you need to be ready to pivot. That's, again, part of being adaptable. And then, of course, you have to be able to bring the team with you. It can be a huge disappointment if a program goes off the tracks, and especially if it's cancelled, because people become personal about it. They become attached to it. It's almost like their pet. So when you say you're going to have it put down, they're not really very happy about that. The program manager has to help deal with that fallout and make clear why this is a business decision, why it brings value to the business to eliminate a program or to rescope it, whatever it might be, to get through that difficult part. And to encourage the team to look forward and look for more success, as opposed to focusing on what could be seen as a failure. It's a learning possibility as well. So that's also something I like to emphasize. What have we learned from this? And let's not do it again if it's something that we can avoid. Pam, how about you?
I was just thinking too, that's where good negotiation skills may come into play as well too, and understanding whether it's a client or within your team, where everyone's coming from, what is causing that delay, what differences what is it that we can differently change, or the strategy piece of it. And a lot of it is just, the communication, negotiating, and being able to be flexible and see how you can make things meet.
This is David Rosen. I was the one that asked that question. I'm an outside consultant to Halloran. I don't know if Pam or Carolina know me, but I'm a pharmacist as well as an attorney, and spent 15 years at FDA. And sometimes things just don't go well in the development process. And, sometimes the product doesn't work well. Sometimes we get wrong answers from FDA and things like that. We have to deal with it. I think you've heard a lot from Pam and Carolina that communication is the key. I mean, you can't sugarcoat things. We've got to deal with things as they come up, and we really need to kind of understand what the concerns are, how we're going to address them, and either we can move forward with a different proposed strategy, or sometimes you end up killing those projects. So, but there's a lot of different ways that you have to deal with that, but effective and honest and open communications is really the key. Thank you.
Thanks.
We do have a few more questions in the chat, but unfortunately we're down to 3 minutes and we do want to try and wrap things up. I'm sure we're not the only ones that have got more client meetings coming up. I think we have one more slide that helps us with our tying up those loose ends or showing us where we've been and where we're going. And those people whose questions we haven't answered, please feel free to reach out to us directly, or if we can find you, we'll give you our thoughts on that after this meeting. We do appreciate your time and energy in thinking of these questions. So here we go. The point of this discussion today was to talk about how a program manager is essential to success for any life sciences group. So in our tour bus here, we have your Halloran program manager driving the bus. You may have your own bus, I don't know. But what can they do as they're driving this along to reach the end of that road of success? They may help with developing an enterprise PMO. We didn't really get very heavily into that. I know Pam mentioned it, but we obviously didn't have time to get in depth in that. Strategy, Carolina pointed out several times that she has a close relationship, certainly at the very beginning, with management of a company to ensure that the strategy is well articulated and communicated to the working team. The competitive advantage we've talked about a few times here, where we've talked having somebody who is monitoring and enforcing some of the timelines, not letting things go too far off track because it's interesting, ensuring that we are cognizant all the time within the group. How are we bringing value? How are we going to be helping patients? And then ultimately as well, how is the company going to benefit from this? We want to do good for patients and do well for the company. Goal-oriented, one of our roles is to see where are we trying to go, how can we get there as effectively as possible. Leadership, I don't know about anybody else. My thinking is we generally will go for the servant leadership model of program management. So we are supporting the team, but we're also pushing them where we need to, pulling them where we need to. And then development, we're sometimes helping to articulate or make clear where are we going next. And we might be talking short term, we're also talking long term. So we're helping the team to plan, making a plan that's achievable. So we're right at the top of the hour, and unless we have anything else, I'm looking at my colleagues here and not seeing anybody shake their head yet. We really do appreciate you taking the time out of your day to join us. We enjoyed that. We'd appreciate your feedback. If you have other questions, please send them along and we will do our best to answer them. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.